Far away from the crowded trade routes of the galaxy, there was a quiet star system called Velker Reach. It was not a famous place. It had no rich planets, no large cities, and no powerful fleets. Most travelers passed through without even stopping. But on that quiet day, something strange drifted through the darkness of space. A small escape pod floated slowly between cold stars. The pod was badly damaged. Its metal shell was burned and cracked. One of its engines was completely destroyed. Faint sparks flickered from broken wires. The pod moved slowly, pushed only by weak emergency thrusters. Inside the pod, there was a single life form. A human. Not many species in the galaxy had ever seen a human up close. Stories about them were common, but most were confusing. Some said humans were brave explorers. Others said they were dangerous fighters who survived impossible battles. But one thing most species agreed on was simple. Humans were unpredictable. At that same moment, a small patrol ship from the Kalari Union entered the system. The Kalari were a peaceful alien civilization. They believed in law, order, and helping others when possible. Their patrol ship, Guardian Wing, was performing a normal border scan. Inside the bridge, Captain Redhan watched the scanners quietly. The ship was calm. The crew was relaxed. It had been weeks since anything unusual happened in their patrol sector. Then the scanner officer suddenly leaned forward. "Captain. I am detecting something strange." Redhan turned his head. "Explain." "There is a drifting escape pod ahead. It is heavily damaged." The captain nodded slowly. Damaged pods were rare in this quiet region. "Scan the life signs." The officer hesitated. "Captain, the life form inside is not Kalari." "Then what is it?" The officer looked at the screen again, as if he could not believe what he was seeing. "It appears to be human." The bridge suddenly became silent. Several crew members turned their heads toward the screen. "A human, here." Captain Redhan slowly stood from his chair. "Confirm the scan." "Yes, Captain. Biological patterns match human physiology." The captain walked closer to the large viewing window. Far away, a tiny object drifted slowly through space. He had heard many stories about humans. Some stories said humans fought wars that shook entire star systems. Others said humans could survive injuries that would kill most species. But he had never actually seen one before. The medical officer spoke quietly from behind him. "Captain, the life signs are weak. The human is dying." Another officer quickly responded. "Then we should leave it." Redhan turned his head. "Explain your reasoning." The officer spoke carefully. "Humans bring trouble. Everyone in the galaxy knows this. If we rescue it, we might involve ourselves in a human conflict." Another crew member agreed. "Yes, Captain. Humans have many enemies. Helping one could create problems for our people." The bridge filled with quiet discussion. Some crew members wanted to help. Others believed it was safer to leave the pod drifting in space. The captain remained silent for a long moment. Then he asked one simple question. "If it were one of our own people in that pod, what would we do?" No one answered. The medical officer finally spoke. "We would save them." Captain Redhan slowly nodded. "Then our decision is clear." He turned toward the pilot. "Bring the pod aboard." The crew looked surprised, but no one argued. The patrol ship slowly moved closer to the damaged escape pod. Mechanical arms extended from the ship and carefully pulled the pod into the rescue bay. Inside the bay, engineers quickly opened the cracked hatch. Cold air escaped from the pod. And there he was. The human. He wore a damaged military suit. The armor was burned in several places. His helmet was broken, and dried blood covered part of his face. But even unconscious, the human looked strong. The medical team quickly carried him to the ship's medical room. For hours they worked to stop the bleeding and repair his injuries. Finally, the machine stabilized his condition. The human survived. Several hours later, the human slowly opened his eyes. Captain Redhan stood beside the medical bed. The human looked around the room slowly. His eyes were tired, but alert. "You saved me?" the human asked weakly. Redhan nodded. "Yes." The human was quiet for a moment. Then he gave a small, tired smile. "Thank you." He slowly turned his head toward the captain. Then he said something simple. Something the Kalari crew would remember forever. Humanity never forgets kindness. Captain Redhan did not fully understand those words. To him, it sounded like nothing more than polite gratitude. But far away, beyond many stars, a message had already reached human space. And when humanity heard what the Kalari had done, everything would change. 3 months passed after the human was rescued. Life in the Kalari Union slowly returned to normal. The patrol ship Guardian Wing continued its missions, and Captain Redhan rarely thought about the strange rescue anymore. The human soldier had recovered quickly. Humans healed faster than most species. After only a few weeks, he was strong enough to stand, walk, and speak clearly. But he never shared much about himself. When the Kalari doctors asked questions about his ship or his mission, the human only smiled politely. "I was far from home," he would say. Nothing more. The Kalari respected his silence. Eventually, a human recovery vessel arrived at the edge of their system. The ship was large, dark, and heavily armored. It did not threaten anyone, but its presence alone made many Kalari nervous. Humans were still a mystery to most of the galaxy. The human soldier left quietly. Before boarding his ship, he met Captain Redhan one last time in the docking bay. The two stood facing each other under the bright white lights. "You risked trouble helping me," the human said calmly. Redhan simply replied, "It was the right thing to do." The human studied the alien captain for a moment, as if memorizing his face. Then he repeated the same words he had said before. Humanity never forgets kindness. After that, the human ship disappeared into hyperspace. And life in Velker Reach returned to silence. At least, for a while. Far away, in the dark outer regions of the galaxy, something dangerous was moving. A powerful empire known as the Dravik Dominion had begun expanding again. The Dravik were feared across many star systems. They did not negotiate. They did not trade. They conquered. For decades they had quietly grown stronger, building fleets larger than any other power in the galaxy. Now they were ready to move again. One system after another fell to their warships. Small civilizations disappeared almost overnight. Some tried to resist. Others surrendered quickly. But surrender rarely saved them. News of the Dravik expansion slowly spread across the galaxy like a cold shadow. Many species became afraid. And eventually, the shadow reached the Kalari Union. In the Kalari capital world, the government council gathered for an emergency meeting. Large holographic maps filled the chamber. Red warning signals flashed across several nearby systems. One council member spoke nervously. "The Dravik Dominion has taken 3 neighboring sectors." Another added, "Their fleets are moving closer to our territory." The room grew quiet. The Kalari had always been a peaceful civilization. Their fleets were small. Their military defenses were built mainly for patrol and piracy control. They were not prepared for a massive invasion. One council member asked the question everyone feared. "If the Dravik come here, can we stop them?" No one answered. Even the most optimistic commanders knew the truth. They could delay the Dravik. But they could not defeat them. Captain Redhan stood quietly at the edge of the council chamber. As a respected officer, he had been invited to give his opinion. He studied the star map silently. The red markers showing Dravik fleet movements were getting closer every week. Finally, he spoke. "We should ask for help." The council members looked at him. "From who?" one asked. Redhan hesitated. "The Human Alliance." Several council members immediately protested. "Humans are unpredictable. They may demand something in return. They may not even answer." But Redhan remembered the words the human soldier had spoken. Humanity never forgets kindness. Still, hope alone was not enough. In the end, the council sent emergency messages across the galaxy, asking nearby civilizations for assistance. Days passed. Then weeks. No fleets arrived. Most species were too afraid of the Dravik to become involved. The Kalari Union was alone. Months later, the first Dravik fleet appeared on long-range scanners. Thousands of warships entered the outer edge of Kalari space. Their dark ships moved slowly but confidently, like predators entering hunting territory. On the bridge of Guardian Wing, Captain Redhan stared at the growing enemy signals. The invasion had begun. The Kalari fleet gathered to defend their homeworld. But everyone knew the truth. Their ships were too few. Their weapons were too weak. And their enemy was far too powerful. As the Dravik armada moved closer, fear spread across the Kalari worlds. Cities prepared evacuation shelters. Families said quiet goodbyes. Many believed the end of their civilization had arrived. And yet, somewhere deep in Captain Rethan's mind, a small thought remained. A memory of a wounded human soldier. A quiet voice saying simple words. Humanity never forgets kindness. Redhan did not know if that promise meant anything. But soon, the entire galaxy would learn the answer. The warning alarms began early in the morning. Across the Kalari homeworld Elora, emergency sirens echoed through the cities. Large screens appeared in public squares showing the same terrible image. Thousands of dark ships were entering the system. The Dravik Dominion had arrived. Their fleet moved slowly but confidently, like a giant storm spreading across the stars. Massive battleships, long destroyers, and endless attack cruisers formed a dark wall in space. Even from the surface of Elora, people could see small glowing dots moving across the sky. Those were enemy warships. Fear spread quickly across the planet. Families rushed into shelters. Transport ships lifted civilians into underground safety zones. Emergency defense stations powered up across the world. But deep down, most people already knew the truth. Their fleet was too small. Their enemy was too powerful. This would not be a battle. It would be the end. High above the planet, the Kalari defense fleet formed its final line. Only 300 ships stood between the Dravik armada and the helpless world below. Captain Redhan stood on the bridge of the patrol cruiser Guardian Wing. The once simple patrol ship was now part of the main defense line. Through the large viewing window, he could see the dark shapes of Dravik warships spreading across space. There were thousands of them. The enemy ships were larger than most Kalari vessels, built like floating fortresses with heavy weapons covering every surface. The communications officer spoke quietly. Enemy fleet is approaching attack range. Another officer added, Dravik command channel is broadcasting a message. Play it, Redhan ordered. A deep, cold voice filled the bridge. This system now belongs to the Dravik Dominion. Surrender immediately. Resistance will result in total planetary cleansing. The message repeated again and again across every communication channel. On the bridge, no one spoke. They all understood what planetary cleansing meant. Total destruction. Captain Redhan looked around the bridge at his crew. They were afraid. But they were also ready. We will hold our position, he said calmly. No one argued. There was nowhere else to go. The Dravik fleet slowly spread out across the system, surrounding the Kalari defense ships like hunters surrounding trapped prey. Enemy weapons began charging. Bright red lights appeared along the hulls of their massive warships. The battle would begin soon. Below them, the blue oceans and green lands of Elora shined peacefully under the light of their star. It was a beautiful world. A world worth protecting. Even if they could not win. The tactical officer suddenly spoke. "Captain, we are detecting something unusual." Redhan turned toward the scanner display. "What kind of signal?" "It is a hyperspace disturbance." "Enemy reinforcements?" The officer shook his head slowly. "No, it is coming from the outer edge of the system." The large holographic map in the center of the bridge flickered. Then a new signal appeared. Then another. Then dozens more. The officer's voice became tense. "Captain, more signals are appearing." "How many?" The officer stared at the screen in disbelief. "Hundreds." Another officer quickly joined him. "Wait, no, thousands." The bridge suddenly filled with confusion. What is happening? Are those Dravik ships? No, their energy signatures are different. Captain Redhan stepped closer to the scanner display. "What species?" The answer came slowly. Almost like the officer could not believe it himself. "Human." The word spread across the bridge like a shockwave. Human ships. Thousands of them. A moment later, space itself began to tear open. One by one, enormous human warships burst out of hyperspace. First came heavy cruisers. Then massive carriers. Then battleships larger than anything the Kalari had ever seen. Their gray metallic hulls reflected the light of the nearby star. Rows of weapon systems covered every surface. Engine thrusters burned bright blue as ship after ship entered the battlefield. Within minutes, the empty space behind the Kalari fleet filled with an entire human armada. The Dravik ships immediately stopped their attack formation. Even they seemed surprised. On the Kalari bridge, no one spoke. They simply watched in silence as the human fleet continued to arrive. Hundreds. Thousands. More ships than anyone had expected. Then a communication signal appeared on the screen. It was coming from the largest human battleship at the center of the fleet. The communications officer looked at the captain. "Captain, the humans are requesting to speak with us." Redhan nodded slowly. "Open the channel." The screen flickered. A familiar human face appeared. Older now. Stronger. Wearing the uniform of a fleet commander. It was the same human soldier they had once rescued from a drifting escape pod. He looked directly at Captain Redhan. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then the human commander smiled slightly. "We received your signal." Redhan blinked in surprise. "We never contacted you." The human shook his head. "You didn't need to." He leaned slightly closer to the screen. "You saved one human life." Behind him, the massive human fleet prepared its weapons. Thousands of cannons began to glow with power. Then the human commander finished his sentence. "And humanity never forgets kindness." Outside the viewing window, the human armada moved forward. Straight toward the massive Dravik fleet. The real battle was about to begin. For a moment, the battlefield was completely silent. Two enormous fleets faced each other across the dark space of the Kalari system. On one side stood the massive Dravik Dominion armada, ships dark and heavy like iron fortresses. On the other side, the newly arrived human fleet, stretching across the stars like a wall of steel. The Kalari ships remained in the middle, small and fragile compared to the giants around them. On the bridge of Guardian Wing, Captain Redhan watched the scene with disbelief. Only minutes ago, his people believed their civilization was about to disappear. Now, thousands of human warships had appeared out of nowhere. The human commander's voice still echoed in his mind. Humanity never forgets kindness. Suddenly, the calm silence broke. The Dravik fleet began to move. Their commanders quickly realized that the situation had changed. What was supposed to be an easy conquest had suddenly turned into a dangerous battle. Large enemy ships shifted formation, turning their heavy weapons toward the human armada. On the Dravik command channel, a cold voice broadcasted across space. Unknown human fleet. Leave this system immediately. This world now belongs to the Dravik Dominion. For a few seconds, there was no answer. Then the human flagship responded. The same calm voice of the human commander spoke again. This world is under human protection. The Dravik commander replied instantly. You have no authority here. The human commander did not raise his voice. He simply said one sentence. We do. At that moment, hundreds of human warships began moving forward. Their engines burned bright blue as they advanced across the battlefield. Fighter squadrons launched from massive carriers, forming fast-moving clouds of small attack ships. On the Kalari bridge, the tactical officer whispered in awe. They're not forming defensive lines. Captain Redhan watched the human fleet carefully. No, he said quietly. They're preparing to attack. The Dravik fleet fired first. Thousands of red energy beams exploded across space, rushing toward the human armada. The battlefield suddenly filled with bright flashes of light. But the human ships did not retreat. Their shields ignited in glowing blue waves, absorbing the first wave of attacks. Some ships were hit, but the formation did not break. Then humanity answered. Rows of powerful cannons fired from the human battleships. Long streams of bright white and orange energy shot across space, striking the front line of Dravik warships. The first enemy cruiser exploded instantly. Another ship lost its engines and spun out of control. Human fighter squadrons rushed through the battlefield like hunting birds, launching missiles and plasma weapons at close range. The Dravik fleet quickly realized something terrifying. Human battle tactics were completely different. Instead of fighting slowly and carefully, the human ships moved aggressively. They attacked from multiple directions at once, confusing the enemy formation. Large human carriers launched wave after wave of fighters. Heavy destroyers rushed forward, targeting enemy command ships. The battlefield turned into chaos. Explosions flashed everywhere. Ships burned. Broken metal drifted through space. On the bridge of the human flagship, the human commander stood calmly as the battle unfolded around him. An officer approached. Enemy fleet strength is dropping quickly. The commander nodded. Continue pressure on their command ships. Yes, sir. On the Kalari ships, the crews watched the battle with amazement. They had never seen warfare like this before. The Dravik fleet had always been feared across the galaxy. But now, they were losing. Within an hour, dozens of Dravik warships had already been destroyed. Their attack formation was collapsing. The Dravik commander sent another message. Human fleet, cease your attack immediately. But this time, the human commander did not respond. Instead, the human fleet pushed forward even harder. More enemy ships exploded. More fighters swarmed the battlefield. The Dravik fleet finally began retreating. One by one, their ships turned away from the fight and attempted to escape into hyperspace. The human commander finally spoke again. Do not pursue. His officers looked surprised. Sir. The commander watched the retreating enemy fleet. They came here for conquest. He paused for a moment. We came here for protection. Outside the window, the surviving Dravik ships disappeared into hyperspace. The battle was over. The Kalari homeworld was safe. For the first time in many hours, silence returned to the battlefield. On the bridge of Guardian Wing, Captain Redhan slowly exhaled. His people had been saved. And across the stars, the human fleet remained, standing guard. The battlefield slowly became quiet again. Broken pieces of destroyed ships floated through the empty darkness. Small fires still burned on damaged hulls, and drifting metal reflected the distant light of the system's star. But the war was over. The massive Dravik fleet had retreated. Their surviving ships had jumped into hyperspace, escaping the system as fast as they could. For the first time in many hours, the people of Elora could breathe again. Across the planet, citizens came out of emergency shelters. They looked up at the sky where the stars shined peacefully again. Above their world, something incredible filled the space around their planet. The human fleet was still there. Thousands of powerful warships remained in orbit, forming a silent wall of protection. They did not celebrate. They did not demand rewards. They simply stayed. Standing guard. On the bridge of Guardian Wing, Captain Redhan watched the quiet battlefield through the large viewing window. The tactical officer spoke softly. Enemy signals have completely disappeared from the system. Another officer added, human fleet remains in defensive formation. Redhan nodded slowly. They are making sure the Dravik do not return. The communications officer turned toward him. Captain, the human flagship is requesting a meeting. Redhan answered immediately. Prepare a shuttle. A short time later, Redhan entered the large hangar bay of the human flagship. The ship was enormous. Its interior was filled with powerful machines, armored vehicles, and human soldiers moving quickly across the deck. Everything about the ship felt strong and purposeful. At the center of the bay stood the human fleet commander. The same soldier the Kalari had once rescued from a broken escape pod. He looked different now. His uniform carried the markings of high command. His posture was confident, and his eyes were calm but sharp. When he saw Redhan approach, he gave a respectful nod. Captain Redhan. Redhan returned the gesture. Commander. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Both remembered the day they first met. The human finally smiled slightly. You look surprised. Redhan answered honestly. We did not expect humanity to arrive with an entire fleet. The commander looked around the hangar quietly. Many of my people believed the same thing. Redhan tilted his head. What do you mean? The human commander folded his arms. When my rescue report reached human space, many leaders believed the Kalari were simply being kind. Some thought we should send a thank you message. He paused. But some of us believed kindness should be returned properly. Redhan remained silent. The human commander continued. You saved one human soldier. To many species in the galaxy, that might not mean much. He looked directly at Redhan. But to humanity, every life matters. The Kalari captain slowly nodded. So you came to repay a debt? The human shook his head. No. He turned slightly toward the massive window showing Elora shining peacefully in space. We came to protect our friends. For a moment, the hangar bay was quiet. Then the commander spoke again. Across the galaxy, many species fear humans. Redhan said nothing. They both knew it was true. The human commander continued. They see our wars. They see our weapons. They see our fleets. He paused. But they do not understand the most important thing about us. Redhan asked quietly. And what is that? The human commander smiled again. If you stand with humanity, humanity stands with you. Outside the window, the human fleet slowly adjusted its position around the planet, creating a permanent defense line. The Kalari world was no longer alone. In the months that followed, news of the battle spread across the galaxy. Many civilizations watched the battle recordings carefully. They saw the moment when the Kalari fleet was surrounded. They saw the moment when the human armada arrived. And they heard the message the human commander sent before the battle. You saved one of us, today we save all of you. For the first time, many species began to understand something important. Humans were not only warriors. They were something much more dangerous. They were loyal. And once humanity called you a friend, they would cross the entire galaxy to protect you.